ever laughed so hysterically at something so simple you were starting to get legitimately worried that you were losing your sanity or something? About what were you laughing so hard then? Story 1, it was a windy day, and I was eating a bagged lunch with my coworkers. Suddenly, a huge gust of wind blows the bag, and all my food away, leaving me staring at an empty table with a fork in my hand. I didn't even try to catch it. I just started laughing so hard I had to lay on the ground. Story 2, in high school, a guy at my table was asked if he ever had, and with the most straight face said no, but I've seen dogs do it. His frankness and deadpan attitude made me laugh so hard, and for so long I was worried that I was going to pass out. Story 3, I had a dream recently that a friend of mine spent 2 full hours focusing intensely hard on writing something down. When he was finally finished, he showed it to me in a 5-year-old's handwriting in crayon. The page simply read apple cider dog nuts. I laughed so hard I woke myself up crying. Story 4, I didn't question my sanity, but I got stuck in a laughing loop with my then 1-year-old son. He was laughing at my laugh, and I was laughing at his. It was the better part of an hour, and we were both exhausted afterward. It was over 30 years ago, and it still makes me so when I think about it. Story 5, this is the end bloopers when they're talking about their religion, and Craig Robinson says, and Danny's Muslim, and Danny McBride just says shalom. It's not even that funny, but I lose my every single time. Story 6, my mom once said boo to my dad, who kept hiccuping to make him stop. She said it in the most innocent and pure way that we couldn't stop laughing. The laughing went on for like an hour, though. Story 7, I don't remember the context, but my best friend and I, then in our preteens, early teens, were flopping around on our bedroom floor and screaming fish out of water. We insisted on showing her mom, who looked at us like we were on meth. I almost passed out. I could not breathe from laughing so hard. Story 8, I read a meme asking if Norwegian clowns say HJNK. My girlfriend speaks fluent Norwegian and told me how that would be pronounced. Kind of a HYONK. I thought I was going to pass out from lack of air due to laughing ID, catch a grip every now, and then, in a quiet hionk, would corpse me into laughing harder. Story 9, many years ago, I went through about a week-long phase where I simply could not read my credit card number over the phone without laughing hysterically. No reason. It just started one day. Then I think I got all up in my head, and it just snowballed from there. Every time I tried to order food, confirm some travel reservation, whatever, I would start laughing, and it would take me forever to get through the number. The surprising thing was how infectious the laughter was. I thought the people on the other end of the phone would be annoyed, but probably 9 times out of 10, they'd start laughing too. It was like some virulent mind worm of contagious hysteria, and then just as suddenly as it started, it was over. Hasn't happened since, though I still brace myself every time, just in case. Story 10, it was actually something in an AskReddit thread. The question was something along the lines of, what is an unsolved mystery or paranormal activity that cannot be explained? Someone's reply was that one time when they were younger, they farted and the TV turned off. I have no idea why, but something about how it was sandwiched between much more serious replies just made me lose it. I was laughing so much my wife came to ask what was so funny. Her reaction, basically calling me an idiot, made me laugh even more. Even as I typed this comment, I'm grinning like an idiot thinking about it. Edit, whoa, this blew up. Wife is still sleeping beside me, and am giggling reading all these replies. Thanks for all the awards and all the laughs. This is what makes Reddit awesome. Story 11, I was breastfeeding my newborn in the middle of the night and watching Dave Chappelle. The Rick James skit was on. I cried laugh so hard that my husband woke up and took the baby away because he was afraid I was going to drop him. He asked me what was wrong, and I snorted him Rick James. He was not amused. Me and my friend nearly ended ourselves laughing at the Benedict Cumberbatch memes, Benedict Cabbage Patch, and so on. It was at the point where it physically hurts to laugh at it. Wow. I woke up to more than 8K upvotes and 3 awards. It's heartwarming to see that in such shitty times, simple things can unite us all in laughter. I have loved reading new variations and silently shaking with laughter next to my sleeping other half. Thank God for COVID-19 Christmas mask. His name is the gift that keeps giving. Story 12, really high, doing a puzzle with my husband, and we were eating the shittiest frozen pizza we had ever eaten, like just the worst. It was supposed to be garlic cheese, and it tasted like absolute nothing in cardboard, so we started pulling everything out of the fridge to put on it and make it better. Finally, my husband decided he was going to cook a bunch of hot dogs and roll them up in the pizza. Somehow, the concept of hot dog pizza was so incredibly funny. We both started laughing and couldn't stop. I laughed so hard for so long it became physically painful and I couldn't breathe, but I couldn't stop laughing, so I was just barking out this weird honking cough. By the time we stopped laughing, I was pretty sure I'd laughed myself sober. We marked the date on our calendar, so we never forgot Hot Dog Pizza Day. And a month after that night, Pizza Hut came out with hot dog crust pizza, and I swear they were spying on us. Edit, for anyone who wanted to know, Hot Dog Pizza Day is October 13th. Story 13, my friend and I were watching Cloudy with a chance of meatballs when we were about 12. There's a scene in that movie where a giant bowl of water spills on everybody sitting in bleachers, and there's a guy in the splash zone ready to get wet. Except everybody except him gets splashed instead, and he throws his hat on the ground and yells, "AW, come on." My friend and I laughed our asses off at this, and this eventually led to us replaying a ton of scenes in slow motion, zoomed in, etc. Story 14, my family was eating at Red Robin. My grandpa told a great joke. I laughed so hard that on my pants. I was like 5. My dad took me to the restroom and asked if they were my lucky underwear. I said no, cut them off with his pocket knife, cleaned me up, and went back out to finish our food. Story 15, I was in an SAT class, and we were going over practice questions. The instructor read out a group of spoon collectors, and I began laughing so hard and for so long that I had to leave the classroom. I'm over it now, but it was troubling. Story 16, misheard an episode of Octonauts about the coconut crab. The phrase astronaut crabs conjured simultaneous images of crabs in spacesuits, and also giant crabs cracking open astronauts with their claws, and I absolutely lost it. I could hardly breathe. There were tears of mirth. My children were terrified, but also trying to keep up with the joke, which I could barely explain. We still talk about it, but it will never be quite as funny as when my brain caught me by surprise. Story 17, I was cackling like a witch at a memory that wasn't even that funny. I just remembered I had accidentally called a cup of tea a cup of tea. What made me look insane was that I started bursting out laughing in the backseat of my mom's car when her and my sister was talking about how many people had died BC of the last pandemic. Yeah, that was probably horrific to hear. Story 18, me and 2 of my friends were working on a movie, but we messed up some files and accidentally replaced the black screen after a character's suicide with a panorama of cinnamon rolls. Story 19, me and some friends went on a trip with this youth leadership organization. The trip was supposed to last 5 days, but our flight back home was delayed a full 22 hours. We ended up staying in a hotel and playing Cards Against Humanity. I think the prompt had something to do with the worst line on a first date or something like that. One of us answered yeast. We laughed for 10 full minutes, and my sides hurt for the rest of the night. Story 20, I'm in Toys R Us with my 3-year-old who suddenly says she has to go to the bathroom. Oh no, number 1 or 2. I grab her hand and rush to find an employee. Do you have a bathroom? Yes, but it's all the way on the other end of the store. I turn to my daughter, we gotta run. Okay, nah, don't worry, I blew it out. What's that now? I blew it out. I could barely carry my shitty daughter through the store because I was laughing uncontrollably. Had to ditch her pants and underwear in the bathroom garbage and carry her naked out with my coat wrapped around her waist, still laughing hysterically. I must have looked absolutely insane. Story 21, at school 6 years ago, I was eating a jar of Planters mixed nuts and look at the warning label. Mind you, it was barely 700 in the morning, and I did not drink coffee at the time. The warning label said mixed nuts, and I could not stop laughing. I know it's there for people who aren't too bright, but it was just so blatant and hilarious. LOL, let it wow. That's a lot of unexpected upvotes. One might say it's wait for it. It's nuts. Edit 2, thanks for the awards. Story 22, I was reading a list, probably on BuzzFeed, and it was one of those that had alternate names for things like Danger Noodle for snakes, etc. And I got a Volcano Mountain fountain, and I legitimately laughed for 20 minutes. Had to pee, cried, couldn't breathe, the whole works. I couldn't even think about it for weeks without cracking up again. My husband thought I had honestly lost my mind. Story 23, sometime in the mid to late aughts, my husband was on the phone with iRobot customer support regarding our Roomba. I was in another room, but I could hear his side of the conversation clearly, and I could tell he wasn't getting the results he had hoped for. As he got more frustrated, he blurted out, "I've had problems with this robot since the day I brought it home." Something about that particular phrase just hit me hard. I immediately started laughing and couldn't stop. I was still laughing when he got off the phone. Understandably, he wanted to know what was wrong with me. Through maniacal laughter, I parroted the phrase back to him, which had something of a feedback loop effect on my laughter. It's been over a decade, but thinking of that phrase still makes me giggle. Story 24, late at night, during a middle school sleepover, my friends and I started to play a board game called Worst Case Scenario. The cover has 2 pictures on it, one of shark and one of man running from a swarm of bees. Somebody pointed out it looked like the guy was running from the bees straight into the shark's mouth, and we laughed for 10 minutes straight. The true worst case scenario. Story 25, last night, I randomly thought of a line from one of those Markov chain generators. This was from an automatically generated Hallmark movie, and the line was, INT, small town, snow globe, refillery. Mother, I fill snow globes with snow globe juice better than Jesus Claus. That's probably not what it word for word said, as it's been a while since I saw it. But it was so random that I couldn't even explain why I was laughing. Story 26, a few weeks back, I was taking a shower and I looked at my foot and it just looked so stupid that I started laughing and couldn't stop. Like I had these weird paw-like failed hands attached to my legs and they were so ridiculous looking. And I was just going around with my body ending that way. I laughed at my foot for about 5 straight minutes. Story 27, there's a sticker in my phone keyboard gallery of a purple llama with a box of carrots and it says busy. I saw it work and laughed so hard I was crying. I legitimately could not stop my brain from recalling the image. I had to leave work at it. It's actually a person dressed up in a purple llama suit. Drama llama. Story 28. This actually happened to me and a friend of mine. We were high and typing random phrases in a Google Translate. He suggested I type in dingleberries and translate it to Spanish. It translated to Beas del Dingle. For some reason we lost our at that. I don't think we stopped laughing for half an hour. My head was throbbing from laughing so hard and my lungs hurt. Story 29, that song, Oh That Smell, Can't You Smell That Smell came on the radio, and my husband quietly said, did she or something to himself. He didn't even mean for it to be funny. I think he just thought the song was dumb. I died laughing and am cracking up right now thinking about it. And it was like 8 years ago. Story 30 happens to me quite a bit while reading Reddit. The last one was a comment about a preacher referring to God as the great comforter, and the author envisioned a hideous blanket. I'm cracking up again thinking about it. Story 31, the first time I was high, edibles were too strong. I spent an hour trying to Google how many parts the last Hobbit movie had. Finally, I was able to type it in and press search. But I had just Googled Hobbit parts. The only thing I could think was they were just like human parts, but shorter and hairier. When I finally recovered from laughing, I tried again. But when I looked at the results, I had Googled Hobbit oats. Then I gave up. Story 32, I still don't understand it. A young cousin of mine was reading a book about a Farmer Brown to her teddy bear. She paused to say something about it to the bear, and I asked what's his name. She looked at me, completely dead-faced, and said Farmer Brown as though I were a complete idiot. I laughed so hard I ended up crying, puking, and I think I very nearly went into some sort of convulsion. Story 33, there is a meme that for some reason I find hysterical, to the point where if my so would just mention part of the text, I would end up crying of laughter. I love it so much. Last Valentine's Day, he printed and framed it for me. I've had the meme for almost a year in my room, and it still makes me laugh on a daily basis, and I will never understand why it gets me so good. Edit the stupid meme and proof I have it framed. Story 34, I was telling a joke to a friend in 8th grade science, and I got sent out into the hall because I was laughing too much, and I didn't even finish the joke, and it wasn't even that funny. Story 35, on a movie me and my family was watching, a man was slowly lifting a gun to fire at a woman. They didn't show her getting hit. They only showed a close-up of her high heels staggering back and forth. I lost it laughing. Everybody in the room was glaring at me. Story 36, you have to understand that my mother has always been very eccentric, borderline weirdo. One night, she woke me up and asked me to help her paint the staircase because she hated the color. We were having so much fun, making jokes, laughing, throwing paint at each other. It's one of my favorite memories of her, and I love her very much. I'm pretty sure that we were just high on paint fumes, but I eventually made a joke about golf being gay-friendly because it's mostly a bunch of old men in short shorts trying to gently put their in tight holes. We almost died. We laughed so hard and for so long that we woke up everyone in the house. I love my mom. Even though she's older and sick, she's never lost that spark, that joy for life, and everything in it. The happiest moments of my life have been with her. Edit PS. I'm showing her the comments and amount of upvotes this got, and she's very excited and happy now. Thank you, everyone. Story 37, I was in high school when one of my friends said something stupid, and another replied, "What do you have in your head?" Confetti, the mental image of a head suddenly exploding into confetti, still cracks me up to this day. Story 38, every time I see this one Vine where it's the GameCube startup sound, but it ends with a guy tripping and yelling SHIT. I bust out laughing. I cannot explain why. Story 39, we had a chapel service during school in which our vice principal was being interviewed about the importance of prayer. I told my friends to imagine her saying masturbate every time she said pray. She continues to say that the moment she wakes up, she prays. Then she prays with her husband. They'll often walk out in the garden and pray. She actually has a book full of students' names and pictures, and often prays, thinking of each of us individually. Could not breathe from silent laughter the entire service. ETA apostrophe. Story 40, my bathroom fan recently started squeaking. When my 5 years old heard it, she said, Dad, put the fan in crazy sound mode. I still laugh every time I hear it. Story 41, I was reminiscing about yoga class when I decided to join during a quiet wind-down stretching session. He farted loudly, the bubbly cheeks flappy kind, and it took all the strength in me to not laugh out loud because shaming is frowned upon in class. The worst part was when the instructor stopped talking for a while, and I imagine it's because she had to also regain her composure and not shame as well. Those 2 minutes were so brutal as I silently shook trying to contain my inner peace. Couldn't even look at my face until we left the building. I had my best friend in high school over for a sleepover, and my mom had fallen asleep on the couch while we were all hanging out. My little brother, who was around 10 at the time, thought it would be funny to grab my mom's hairdryer, stand over her sleeping body, point the hairdryer at her, and yell, "Where were you on the night of the murder?" startling her awake. That was enough to send us into hysterics, but what made it even better was her reaction of shaking her head, slowly sitting up and telling my brother, "Okay, time for bed." In her tiredest voice, my best friend and I spent the next 10 minutes rolling around on the floor laughing and screaming. Story 42. I said to my girlfriend that if she didn't laugh in the next 30 seconds, I would cook dinner. For the next 15 minutes, we were laughing uncontrollably, genuine tears and hyperventilation. Story 43. I was in the grocery store about 2 weeks ago, and went to grab some eggs. As I opened the box to check them, I was reminded of a post on Reddit about a guy that went a great deal of his life not knowing why people open egg boxes, but was nervous if he didn't do it people would stare at him. So he would open them just to look the part. Started laughing out loud. While looking at eggs, people were staring at me. I never got out of there so fast. Well, Story 44. In high school, my friends made a PowerPoint presentation for the class. As they were presenting, I noticed that the first few slides had a bunch of typos, no biggie, but as they reached the middle of their slide, the typos started getting more and more ridiculous. I quietly laughed at some of the funnier ones, but eventually I just lost it. I could not stop myself from laughing, and every time I was about to stop, another typo appeared making me laugh harder. I definitely questioned my sanity that day. Story 45. I was in a large multi-floor bookstore, walking down a flight of stairs when I heard a phone ring. A sales clerk answered its self-help. "May I help you?" That seemed like the funniest thing in the world to me, and I burst out laughing. Not just one chuckle, but sustained laughter that made people start to look at me. That seemed even more absurd. So I rushed to a news section, but still laughing and attracting more attention. So I sped up more, laughing harder, attracting new attention in every new location, until eventually I ran a half circuit of the floor and took refuge under the stairs I'd come down so that I could compose myself. Story 46. My friend cremated her goldfish. This was in high school 20 years ago. She brought it out in this nice little box. I started laughing so hard I fell to the ground. She was horrified, started crying, and told me it took her 15 hours to cook his body into ashes in her oven. I died then. I was crying. I was laughing so hard. I just thought it was funny because she cremated a fish that lives in water. It was ridiculous that one, she would cremate a fish, and two, she spent a whole day doing it. She still doesn't understand why I thought it was so funny. And I did stop laughing and comforted her about her fish. She has never forgotten my reaction, and it still makes me laugh to this day. Story 47. OMG. I was at school with my best friend. We were walking toward the principal's office, and we saw his secretary go out of the office towards the pay phone on the wall next to the office. She put a coin in the pay phone slot, and the pay phone suddenly fell to the ground and broke apart on the floor. We both started to laugh until we dropped. I actually peed my pants. Story 48. I was working in a group home, finishing up some paperwork after an overnight shift, and accidentally wrote shampoo instead of shampoo. One of the residents asked me if I needed help. I was laughing so hard. Story 49. Maya and I were watching the episode of What We Do in the Shadows, where Colin Robinson keeps baiting people with the updog joke. My, God love him, isn't the brightest, and after the fourth or fifth time Colin said updog, he looked over at me with the most confused, annoyed tone and genuinely asked, "What is updog?" Except mid-sentence he realized the joke, and his face went from confused and annoyed to embarrassed. I died, laughed so hard I don't remember the rest of the episode. I make sure to talk to him about updog every couple of weeks, so he doesn't live it down. Story 50. My sister, who is 6 years younger than me, say you can't catch me, and promptly ran into the base of a slide. All the other people at the playground to see a 7-year-old crying and a teenager laughing maniacally. I got yelled at pretty good, but totally worth it. It didn't even look that funny, but due to some reason I found it so hilarious. Story 51. I legit almost died and pretty sure playing a video game. One of my wife's favorite games is Shenmue. Originally released on the Dreamcast in 1999, it plays like an early prototype for games like Yakuza or Sleeping Dogs, but it was very crude by any modern standard. It's quite bad, I would say, in fact, but in a so bad it's good sort of way, which is very rare for video games. They put out a remaster a couple years ago, and she had me play through it while she watched. She wanted to see what I thought of it. The plot revolved around the main character investigating his father's murder. He does this mostly by wandering around town and just asking random people on the street questions, hoping it will somehow help. At one point, he gets a lead that something might be going on at the docks. The main character, who isn't too bright, thinks, hey, sailors work at the docks, I should talk to some sailors. So do you go to the docks? No, that would make too much sense. Instead, as you wander around town aimlessly, you can ask people, do you know where I could find some sailors? Over and over again. It started to get pretty funny, just asking random people for sailors constantly. Well, at one point my wife went to the bathroom, and I stopped to look at the in-game journal. It's where the game keeps all your notes of things you've learned, but they're all written in faux handwriting as if the main character wrote himself a note. I flip it open, and the only thing on the current page in big letters is must find sailors. I completely lost it. Would already kind of been laughing about this search for sailors for like an hour, and when that popped up, it was like the last straw, and something in my head broke. I was completely hysterical with laughter. I couldn't stop. I couldn't breathe. It started to hurt. That only made me laugh harder, and I was starting to worry I was going to pass out. My wife walked back in from the bathroom and was very confused. She was just in time to see my cat, who had been curled up on the couch next to me, start to yowl and swat at me. Apparently, my lunatic laughter had unnerved him. What's so funny? She asked. I gestured weakly toward the screen with the still open journal and managed to wheeze out must find sailors. As I fell into another fit of laughter, it was a good 5 to 10 minutes before I was coherent. Must find sailors is still a nice little private joke between us. Story 52. Back in elementary school one day, I started laughing at my friend's voice impression. There was something about it that I just couldn't stop laughing for 3 or 4 classes. Never laughed so much in my life again. Story 53. My friend and I were doing practice Calculus 2 problems in college in the physics library. We got to a point where we could solve out some of the integrals in our heads, and the absurdity of one of them got to me, and I broke down laughing for a good 10 minutes as the sun rose. I thought for sure I'd been broken by the course. It's one of my favorite memories of college. Story 54. We had a margarita. My friend told us about this roommate that would ask to sing them to sleep. I deadpanned a Michael Scott joke. Would she fit in a regular-sized canoe? She said no. We all died laughing. Story 55 happened a few weeks ago. During lunch at school, me and my friend were sitting at a table under a tree on my arm, and we laugh a bit about that. But I took my hoodie off and said whatever. There was only one period left anyway. A few minutes later, I'm still eating, and shit's right next to me on my other side, and it splashes on my other arm. I start cursing and scooting to the side away from and I end up scooting too far and falling off the bench. I just laid on the ground laughing for a good few minutes while he laughed looking down on me from the bench. Story 56. When I was young, I was watching an episode of Hell's Kitchen, and a contestant fell while running with a big bag of ice, and I just lost it, hysterical laughing until I cried. Not sure why. My mom still brings it up years later. She thought I was on drugs. Story 57. I'm studying chemistry, and it happened in undergrad lab. I was under a lot of stress that probably didn't exactly help either. I was doing a synthesis that took me 3 days, and at the end of the reaction, I looked into the flask where there was supposed to be a lot of white crystal sim, talking like 15 to 20 grams, and all I saw was a tiny bit of material at the bottom of the liquid inside of the flask, maybe the size of a grain of salt. I looked at it for a few seconds and just lost it. I just laughed uncontrollably for minutes. I think some people were legitimately worried about my mental stability, including me. Story 58. Yes, I've been dying to tell this story, and I crack up right now as I'm typing it. It was on Reddit. Some guy was complaining on the Baltimore Ravens subreddit. Then another guy responded to him and simply wrote, SDFU you lil idquai. But the inflection, I get a sort of hushed tone, very deadpan line reading, and it cracks me up every time I think about it. I'm laughing RN. Story 59. The first time I saw National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, when Clark Griswold's Christmas lights fail and he pummels the out of Santa and the reindeer, I laughed so hard and long, I thought I was going to suffocate. What an amazing performance. Story 60. I was watching an episode of Monty Python, where at the end of the sketch, the outline of the muscles in the body on a chart in the background popped out of the chart, turned into Python vision, and started walking to the right. He continued walking past flowers, birds, and other cartoon scenes before falling off the end of the movie film. It was so unexpected, I started laughing for at least 5 minutes straight. Story 61. I was telling my son how he was the glue that held his dad and I together at times. Then I said we should have named you Elmer. I was crying from laughing and couldn't stop. My son and husband were just looking at me like I was crazy. It has been brought up a few times since, and I laughed just as hard, and yes, I'm laughing now. Story 62. My wife and girlfriend and I were on the bus. A couple of stoners got on the bus, and randomly one of them said, dude, What if somebody made medical marijuana that gave you superpowers? My girlfriend nearly died laughing. She tried to stay somewhat quiet to not be rude, but she failed. The stoners continue to talk about this and what kind of powers they would want for the whole bus ride imitates taking a hit. I have munchy vision, which only made her laughing fits worse. Her laughing fit eventually caused me to laugh uncontrollably, and it's just like a self-sustaining fusion reaction at that point. Story 63. I sometimes laugh in my sleep. A few times I have woken myself up laughing. I laugh so hard I think certainly it will never stop, and I'm insane. Don't even know what was so funny. Story 64. I was reading a series of dad jokes back to my husband. Each punchline I was finding more progressively funny. Finally, I reached one joke that pushed me over the edge. Where does the general put his armies? His sleeveys? I lost it. Wheezing, couldn't breathe. Start to regain composure. Remember the joke and start laughing again. Story 65. You guys remember that scene from SpongeBob where a kid is crying and says he didn't want pistachio, and the dad shouts, "Then why did you ask for it?" Well, one of my friends said that out of nowhere, and I belly laughed for a good 15 minutes. Story 66. Lunch break at work. Pulled out a glass bottle of sparkling water and opened it. Apparently, it got shaken too much in my bag, and the cap just exploded out of my hand and bounced off the ceiling, leaving me and everyone at my table drenched in water. I laughed the entire time it took to mop up, and I still grin like a little idiot whenever I think about it. Story 67. One night, I had cut a roast on our kitchen table. Some of the grease juices from the roast overflowed from the cutting board, fell onto the table, and from there spilled on a floor. I didn't feel like getting it up, so I put it off until the morning. Cue the next morning, I had forgotten about the spill and went to the fridge, which is right next to the kitchen table. Not seeing anything in the upper shelves of the fridge, I bent down to look at the lower levels. Part of that was adjusting my foot so my stance was wider. Some context. I am a 62 for 150-pound black man. I am by no definition small, and by many definitions very large. That very large man, widened my stance just enough for my foot to land in the grease. The grease immediately felt like my feet were still entirely too close together and made the decision to let my foot slide the rest of the way over. I am now in a full Chinese split. Having not stretched this far since adolescence, my body was not prepared. I tilted myself backwards so I could get out of this painful position, but as I did, I imagined seeing myself fall, and it killed me. I laughed harder at that than anything I can remember. I spent a solid 15 minutes on the floor, in the fetal position, crying, laughing, to the point that my sister was concerned I needed to be admitted to a mental hospital. I eventually calmed down, but even now, thinking about that makes me chuckle. Story 68. Today, someone told me they wished I was dead because I just made them look dumb in a Pokemon battle before they rage quit. It made me laugh way too hard and far too long for some reason. Story 69. So just to warn you guys, this is a very strange story. I have PTSD, and I decided to try Tai Chi because I heard it was good for releasing bottled up an emotion and stagnant chi. I tried following a long YouTube video, and it was a bit too advanced for me. I couldn't follow it. So I paused the video and went to my laptop to maybe look for a simpler routine. As I sat down, I started laughing hysterically out of nowhere, just laughing as hard as I could ever remember laughing in my whole life. But that you know how, when you laugh really hard, you tear up. When that happened, I started crying. So I was laughing and crying at the same time. It was the craziest thing I've ever experienced, trying to sob and laugh at the same time. And after that big emotional release, my life got a lot easier. Just a side note, bottled up emotions are an obstacle, and apparently Tai Chi is great for releasing them. Edits, spelling, and clarity. Story 70 watched this video one night on Instagram and found it insanely funny for whatever reason. Something about the sheer stubbornness of the dude in the Jeep to break it loose. The squeaking is what really got me. I don't think I've ever laughed as hard in all my life. This is where it got strange. 1 second, I was laughing hysterically, and the next I was crying really hard, and I didn't notice the changeover. I cried for about 3 seconds and then stopped and was like, what the was that all about? One of the strangest things to happen to me, because I haven't cried in years. It's almost like I was so far on one end of an emotional spectrum that my brain just jumped track into another end. Weird. Story 71, yes. I was reading a book to my son called Pop, 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 and I was laughing like a lunatic the whole way through. It was so funny. Actually, it wasn't, but at the time I couldn't stop laughing. I really wondered if my brain had finally cracked the whole way through. Story 72, when my sister and I were kids, my mom had to work a late shift once, and we were home alone. We decided to really live it up and make some chocolate chip cookies. We were so rebellious. Anyway, we obviously had the cookies with milk, and after I finished my little cookie pile, I still had a little milk left, so I decided to grab another cookie, so I could have the proper milk-cookie ratio, 1 bite of cookie, 1 sip of milk, and so on. But before the cookie was finished, the milk was gone, so I obviously had to fill up my glass again. And so the cycle continued until I finally ran out of milk and cookies at the same time. This would be a cute story to tell about my 11-year-old self making excuses to eat more cookies. But what makes it so memorable to me was actually that my sister and I found it so funny that we started laughing uncontrollably and couldn't stop for over an hour. No exaggeration. It was pretty infectious, so when I would finally calm down a little, my sister would start laughing harder and vice versa. And by the end of it, we were both a bit sore from laughing so much.